Foreign aid Brexit. Britain should stop funding EU foreign aid at the earliest moment. More than £1 billion a year of taxpayers' money is currently handed over to Brussels, only to be spread about the world without any proper accounting. As an EU member, the UK pays into two separate funds. In 2015, Britain gave £935 million to the European Commission as our contribution to reducing poverty. The same year we also wrote a £392 million check to the European Development Fund, EDF, to provide assistance to African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. Concern has now been raised over the way the cash is dished out. Click here to sign the petition and end the foreign aid madness. The EDF is not part of the EU budget, but the Commission is responsible for the financial implementation of projects. The Daily Express understands that, if money from the EDF is given to a third country and merged with their own budgetary resources, then no audit by the EU takes place. It is simply assumed that the accounting error rate is zero and no corruption is involved. UKIP MEP Margot Parker said that the EU thinks sending money to countries in Africa means the error rate in spending is zero is extraordinary. In normal life, you wouldn't hand over money to someone who has a history of financial abuse without stringent checks. She continued, instead, British taxpayers' money is hosed across the developing world with virtually no auditing and no recourse to transparency. We should stop paying into the so-called European Development Fund until we are told exactly how it is spent. Thank goodness we are leaving this complacent organization soon, but it won't be soon enough. The EU's cavalier approach to our taxpayers' money is not merely outrageous. It poisons the well of goodwill in the British public towards helping the less fortunate parts of the world. Besides the contribution via the EU, Britain spends £13.3 billion a year on official development assistance, the formal name for foreign aid. 3/4 goes through the Department for International Development, DFID, with the remaining £3.5 billion shared across Whitehall. The eye-watering outlay has prompted the Daily Express to launch a Stop the Foreign Aid Madness crusade, urging Prime Minister Theresa May to abolish the UK's commitment to spending 0.7% of our national income overseas. The crusade argues that the government should redirect the vast sum involved to under-resourced frontline services in the UK, like the NHS and social care. Our crusade has received the backing of prominent campaigners, Tory MPs and former UKIP leader Nigel Farage, who has commended the Daily Express for yet another of its campaigns that chimes with the great British public. He had previously wholeheartedly backed the successful Daily Express campaign to get Britain out of the EU. Last night, a source at DFID said, "When we leave the bloc on March 19, 2019, control over how our money is spent will reside with the UK government and allocated in line with UK priorities and our national interest. It means British taxpayers will be able to keep the £1.3 billion they currently send to Europe in foreign aid each year." A DFID spokesman said the UK pays into the EU Development Fund, which reduces poverty and provides emergency humanitarian relief in crisis zones around the world. Once the UK no longer pays into the EU budget, the way this money is spent will be the decision of the UK government.